Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Bill Holter. Bill is a financial writer, a gold expert. Bill also helps individuals purchase and store precious metals. He collaborates with Jim Sinclair on jsmindset.com, and I am very happy to have Bill back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Bill, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, thanks for being here. And I wanted to start off with what is happening out in China. And we see they created the petro yuan, which is going to challenge the petrodollar. And they were testing it, and Venezuela was saying that, yeah, we're going to go along with the petro yuan. And I believe Russia is also going to be looking at this. And they're expecting this to go live after Christmas. From your viewpoint and your research, what impact do you think it's going to have on the petrodollar or the U.S. economy?
Well, it should have a huge impact on the velocity, the use of the dollar, because this means that trading partners now will have a choice as to whether they want to use dollars to settle or yuan to settle. So even if it turns out to be 10, 20, 30% of world oil and gas trade, that's a big chunk of use that the dollar is currently being used for, which it won't be used for. So in other words, that's going to lessen demand for dollars.
So if it lessens demand for dollars, where do those dollars go? I mean, do they come back here to the United States?
Well, when I say lessen demand for dollars, for instance, let's say that you have, just use two countries, use a country that uses oil has to buy dollars in order to trade those dollars to Saudi Arabia or Mexico or whoever. So that's demand that's going to be lessened. It's not that where those dollars are going to go. It's those dollars aren't going to be bought. That's what I'm getting at, is the demand is going to be lessened.
So if less countries are using the dollar, and how about those countries that have the dollar in reserve to buy oil and they decide to switch to the yuan?
That would be a big hit, because then they'd actually have to be selling dollars and buying yuan, just as they're buying, they've bought dollars over the past 30, 40 years. They would be a net seller of dollars and a net buyer of yuan in order to clear their trades.
Now, do those dollars come back to the U.S.? Where do those float to? I mean, what happens to them?
Let's talk about velocity for a moment. The velocity is going to drop. In other words, there'll be even less turnover than now. And right now we're at basically all-time low levels of velocity for the dollar. So as the dollar becomes used even less, and if we see that dollars are being sold by central banks because they don't need as many dollars in reserves, those dollars will come into the marketplace. And I do expect that you're going to see velocity turn. And the reason I think velocity is going to turn is the dollar is going to be viewed as a hot potato. In other words, the typical use of a currency, generally you're going to spend the currency and get it out of your hands that you don't want. And if that's the dollar, then velocity will start to turn up. And I think from these levels of velocity, and I don't have a chart to show you right now, but they're 60, 70-year lows on the velocity of the dollar. When that turns up, those dollars are going to come back home to roost. They're going to come back into the United States, and that will be the beginning of your hyperinflation.
So you're still saying that we're going to end up most likely having hyperinflation if this does happen. And I mean, when you say inflation, you're talking about 3, 4, 5%, or you're talking much higher than that?
No, when all is said and done, because of the amount of credit in the system. First off, in dollar terms, it's going to be an inflation. in gold in terms of money, real money. It's going to be a massive hyper deflation because the credit outstanding is going to liquidate. And as that credit liquidates and defaults, real money becomes worth more and more. Now, the response to the defaults of credit will be the central bank stepping on the gas again and printing dollars. And that's going to happen at the same time dollars from foreigners are going to be coming back to the United States. So no, not 3, 4, 5%, much, much higher levels than that. And I mean, a hyperinflation, a true panic hyperinflation, you could see the dollar within a 3 or 4 or 5 year period of time become literally worthless.
So let's throw on top of that the BRICS. Now, they're looking to create this gold trading system, and they want it to go live in 2018. Are they? Is this like the last, step that they need to take to have their system completely go online? Because they have the payment system, they have other trading systems, and now they're looking to do this physical gold trading system where, to me, it looks like they're trying to take away the price discovery away from the United States. Is this what they're trying to do?
We've said all along that price discovery in the end will be the physical cash markets, and that's what I believe China is looking to do is create a cash trading market for gold. And Dave, you're absolutely right. Many systems have been put in place over the last 2 years to replace the SWIFT system, to replace the World Bank, to replace clearing facilities, etc. The oil for yuan, this gold trading platform. All of these systems, if you will, have been set up so that China, Russia, the BRICS don't have to deal with the United States in any form or fashion.
So if this does go online in 2018, what effect will it have on the London-based gold system, the COMEX, Swiss? What do you see happening there?
Well, you very well could see much of the trading moving toward China because it's a physical market. And I did want to mention, I've talked for the last 2 or 3 years, or even more, I think back to 2013, that each delivery period on COMEX, going into it, there were always many, many, many more contracts outstanding than there were ounces of gold or ounces of silver to deliver. And strangely, and we could never figure out why or how, going 2 to 3 days just before first notice day, you would see the open interest would collapse. And then during the month, you would see the open interest for those standing for delivery, those would slowly go away. So we never had a default, and we couldn't figure out why. And it turns out what they're using are contracts in London. They're called EFPs, Exchange for Physical. Just this month alone, and I got to read these figures for you. In gold, just this month alone. So this is the month of December, and it's the big delivery month on COMEX. There have been 18 million ounces. That's 550 tons in the first 2/3 of the month. So up until yesterday, the 20th, there were 18 million ounces. COMEX only carries 1 million right now in the dealer inventory is 1,070,000 ounces. That's total what they have deliverable. And so far, standing for delivery is about 902,000 ounces. In silver, it's the same thing. In silver, there's a huge amount of EFPs that have been done. There's 201 million ounces. Now, keep in mind, global production is only 800 million ounces, or slightly less than that. So this is more than 25% of global production in 1 month. It's been pushed over to London, out forward to February, March, April, what have you. expecting delivery there. We never could figure out where all these contracts went to. I believe it was Coos Jansen who found it, and then James Turk found, how to track this on a daily basis. But this is the answer. This is why COMEX has not defaulted. COMEX never has carried the inventory to support, for instance, when you see 2 million ounces or 4 million or 6 million ounces sold in 5 or 10 minutes to knock the price down $20, $30, $40. What's happening is they're relying, it looks like, on inventory in London to deliver. Now the question is, how long can they deliver? I mean, this is just in 20 days, 200 million ounces of silver contracted out of London. How deep are their pockets? So the bottom line is the physical market, i.e., what you're talking about coming out of Shanghai, the physical market is eventually going to supplant the paper market, and COMEX prices will be irrelevant.
And, if this does, or when this does happen, where do you see the gold prices going? I mean, if they've been manipulated and suppressed all this time, from your figures and from your research and from what you've been looking at, over a period of time, where do you think gold would be going, or silver, and silver also?
Well, it's been said that the short paper interest to each one physical ounce of gold has been as high as 500 to 1. So if you got 499 naked contracts that have to cover and buy real gold, what has happened in Bitcoin will probably be minuscule with what can and I think will happen in gold and silver.
Now, if that does happen, I mean, we know that China and Russia and a couple other countries, they've been accumulating a lot of gold, and they've been buying it for like $1,200 an ounce, $1,300. Now, all of a sudden, the gold they have is, it's repriced, and now they're powerhouses.
It's the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. That's what it will amount to. The wealth is going to move from west to east. It's already moved. The physical metal is moved. Now all they need to do is reprice the metal.
And do you think that this is all being set up and done for the system to transition to the east?
Yeah, this has been methodical over the last 2 or 3 years, even longer. You've reported on it. A lot of people have spoken of system after system being raised, being tested, being put into place. And basically, the East no longer needs the financial system of the West.
Right now, I mean, Trump, he's pushing through his tax plan, and he's been doing, whatever he's been doing with, manufacturing and things like that. Through his national security plan, he's talking about, we need trade. That's very, very important. I mean, what happens to the U.S. economy? Is it possible to save it, or is he getting it prepared for something different?
Well, first off, I want to say Donald Trump has definitely tried to follow up on his campaign promises. I think his biggest mistake is that he owns the stock market now. When I say he owns the stock market, you've seen him multiple times in the last 2 or 3 months talking about stock market's at new highs, everything's good, blah, blah, blah. And when the credit markets collapse, once they crack, the stock market is going to collapse. And he now owns it because he's saying, look at this stock market. It's up because of me. So I think that's his biggest mistake. And while we're talking about credit markets, one area actually 2 areas in Europe that you can look at, 23% of the Italian banks are actually upside down as far as having a book value. They have negative book values. And the other really interesting thing, and I was shocked, I hadn't even followed it, but I think it was a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, long-term yields on Greek treasury securities are now under 4%. 4%. I mean, there's absolutely zero risk premium. I mean, there's mega negative risk premium in that. I mean,
Yep.
it's mathematically certain that they are insolvent. Now, would you loan somebody that you knew could not pay you back at 4%? No, this is just yield chasing pension funds that need to stuff yield in to show that we've got cash flow. The problem is the cash flow is not going to come. And the problem with Greece is they're not like the United States where they can print euros. The U.S. at least can print more dollars and debase the dollar. Greece does not have that ability to do that.
Yeah, that is true. And we see a lot of the European banks where they're having a huge amount of trouble. You mentioned the Italian banks, and we know that this is most likely going to spread throughout Europe and come back and hit the United States. I mean,
it's a credit event.
Yeah.
It's a credit event, plain and simple.
Now, I wanted to move into what is happening in the crypto market. We're seeing Bitcoin surge like there's no tomorrow. I mean, if you look at the graph, it looks like a bubble. I mean, it has all the hallmarks of the bubble, and it looks just like it. Just recently, the Litecoin creator and owner, he sold all of his holdings. He's saying he is out. We also have a piece, I think it was an opinion piece that was in the Washington Post, I believe. I think that's what it was, where the Fed is looking at the Fed coin. So,
You're not looking at it. The Fed coin, you could pretty much bet these central banks are going to go to blockchain currencies.
Now, do you think this blockchain system, I mean, there are two camps. There's a camp where people are looking at it saying, oh, this is incredible. It's a people's system. It's decentralized, which it could be if the bankers, don't control it. It could be a great system. And then the other camp is saying that this was completely set up. This was created by government, created by the central bank to make us move into their one world currency system. I mean, where do you stand on this?
Well, I think it might have been on your show 2 summers ago. My thought process is, because all of this blockchain can be 100% tracked. It's basically the mark of the beast. This will give governments the ability to track every transaction down to the lemonade stand.
Now, do you think the government created this, or the central banks created this on purpose?
Well, I know the crypto enthusiasts are out there are going to say, well, it doesn't matter who created it. I'm going to say it does matter who created it. There was actually a white paper written back in 1996 that spoke of basically blockchain, Bitcoin, that it was a creation of the NSA. It was an NSA white paper. So, in my opinion, it does matter who created it. I mean, the obvious reasons are if they created it and they have a huge position in it, that we're not, call it Satoshi's position, that can be sold and crush the market and say, well, Bitcoin didn't work out. We're going to come forward with something that will work out, the US crypto or the Euro crypto or what have you. But I have no doubt this is a test run. These are a test run to move the world toward 5 or 6 crypto central bank issued currencies, or maybe one world currency. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I can see where people, when they look at the crypto market and they see Bitcoin skyrocketing like there's no tomorrow, and you look at the graph, I mean, it looks just like a bubble. And when you look at central banks and you see what they do, like with the stock market, you see the same exact graph. The housing market, you see the same exact graph.
This is way bigger than any bubble in the past. If you've seen it compared to the dot-com craze, to real estate in 1929, the South Sea bubble, the tulip bubble, you compare it to any of those, and Bitcoin has surpassed all of them.
Yeah, and it has all the hallmarks of the central banks having their hands on it. Now, I mean, Jeff Nielsen brought this up where he said that they could be purchasing with create while they create, free money. They can take, the free money. They can go in, they can buy the cryptocurrency, and they don't have to control the system. They just have to buy it all up and then dump it whenever they want to bring the system down, because that's normally how they work.
Yeah, Jim Sinclair, when we did our call, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago with Bix and Cliff High, basically he called it a long corner because there was no way to short it. So basically it was a cornered long, and that's why you saw it move. I mean, it's like the Volkswagen that was a cornered short.
Yeah. Now,
it's important that people think about this. Yesterday, I think Bitcoin had a $500 down move, and it was just on 200 or 300 Bitcoin being sold. So the liquidity is not really there. And if you look at one of the largest Google searches right now is how do I buy Bitcoin with a credit card? And you're actually seeing people mortgage their homes to buy cryptocurrencies. This is so dangerous. It's beyond words.
Yeah, and this reminds me of the housing bubble when people were, taking out equity loans and buying, whatever cars or investing in the stock market and everything like that. And then the whole system came down, and it feels like it's happening once again.
But it's worse because the credit outstanding, the credit ratios are worse than they were in 2007, 2008. And there's no real white knight left that can come in and save the system, because remember, the U.S. still had the ability to blow up its balance sheet, which we did. The European Union still had the ability to blow up their balance sheet. In other words, expand their balance sheet. And they've done it. All of these Western nations are 100% plus debt to GDP. That's Banana Republic land.
That is absolutely true. Now, I wanted to get into the truth bombs, which you predicted. And we're seeing a lot of them throughout the year of 2017. And, you said there was going to be a lot coming out, and there were a lot coming out, and there's still more coming out. I mean, what do you see moving forward? Do you see a lot more coming out, or do you have another great prediction you want to give us for 2018?
Well, first off, I want to say there's been more truth bombs come out this year than I could have imagined. I mean, it's just day after day after day. There's just more and more truth. To this point, truth hasn't mattered. And truth hasn't mattered because the average Joe goes to work, his daily life is still okay, nothing's changed. Once the credit markets start to crack, then truth is really going to make a difference. Because if you follow this through, truth affects confidence, and credit only flows because of confidence. So if some of these truth bombs that have come out get exposed more, I mean, what has come out has been so unbelievable of what has happened over the last 8 years with the previous administration, the pedophilia stuff. I mean, you name it, go right down the line. There's just category after category. And by the way, I am doing a 2 or 3 part series the last week of the year that I'm going to be releasing, listing the various truth bombs. I've already got, 12 or 15 hours into trying to collate this. It's kind of a nightmare because it goes from A to Z. But anyway, as more and more truth comes out, and as the credit markets begin to fail, truth is going to directly affect credit because confidence is affected negatively by the truth, and confidence affects credit negatively because you're not going to lend money if you're not confident that the borrower is going to pay back or have the ability to pay back.
So as more and more of this truth comes out, I mean, do you think those people, I mean, they're looking at the Uranium One deal, they're going into, what is happening with the FBI, and, everything is coming out. I mean, are these people going to be brought up on trial, or do they still have the power to distract us from all of this?
As I understand it, there's now over 9,000 sealed indictments in all 94 federal courts throughout the country. 9,000 indictments. In the past, I'm not even sure if there have been 1,000 indictments in a single year. I mean, 9,000 is a huge number. And if these become unsealed, and I've been asked, what if they don't become unsealed? Well, then if that happens, then we have no rule of law. But when these become unsealed and arrests are made, these are going to be people you're going to be absolutely shocked at. Some you won't be shocked at. Some you'll be jumping up and down and cheering. Lock him up, lock her up. But I think there's going to be some people out there, if we find out, wow, I can't imagine it. I mean, think about how you felt when you saw all the allegations against Bill Cosby, America's dad. And
Yeah.
It's going to be a bunch of those instances where it's just going to hit you in the gut. And I think confidence is going to be absolutely shattered. And it will be part and parcel of the credit markets imploding. And everything runs on credit. Everything you do every day runs on credit. Everything you buy, even if you go into your store with a cash $20 bill and buy a loaf of bread or buy gasoline or whatever you buy, that got to the store and was made and created and produced with the use of credit. Everything.
So if the truth does come out and it affects the credit market, affects the economy, affects the stock market, affects everything, and things start to fall apart, are they going to go ahead with it? Because they must know this, that if this information gets out, people are going to lose confidence in the system.
Well, the information is getting out. I mean, just look at what WikiLeaks has done. Look what Judicial Watch is doing. The truth is getting out. So I guess what you're asking me is, will the Department of Justice not unseal the indictments? Will they try to keep everything under wraps? That's possible. But what you're finding is more and more truth is getting. Look at the Bundy trial. I mean, there's an example right there. That's truth that got out basically on its own.
Yeah, there was it was a mistrial, right? Because government held back.
But it turns out that BLM was using very harsh and illegal measures to try to grab land, and that is kind of hand in hand connected with Uranium One, by the way.
And the only thing I'm worried about is those people that will be brought to justice if the truth gets out, and it is getting out there. What I'm worried about is that they won't let it happen. I'm wondering if they still have enough power, because we can see they're pushing and provoking something with North Korea. They want something with Iran. And, they can distract, like going back to 9/11 on September 10th. We know that there was $2 trillion, missing from the Pentagon or something like that. And then all of a sudden it was forgotten.
Yeah, because of the false flag of 9/11, it was forgotten. Now there's 21 trillion missing, as per Catherine Austin Fitts, and two separate professors working separately at two separate universities came up with the same numbers. There's 21 trillion missing. Now, do they kick the table over and start a war, nuclear war, or something in the Middle East with North Korea? Who knows?
This 21 trillion that you just talked about, do they know where the 21 trillion, where it's gone? Like, where did it go?
As I understand it, basically it's missing, and the bulk of it has been via the Pentagon and via HUD.
And what I'm thinking is, if they figure out and they follow the money trail and they find out, this was used for covert operations, this was used to pay off that person, a lot more people would be, implicated in all this nefarious stuff, and they would end up going to jail.
Then you'd have 90,000 indictments instead of 9,000.
Absolutely.
The bottom line is, as truth becomes revealed, reality is going to become more and more forward. And the reality is very ugly. We're living in a Potemkin village where the buildings along the side of the street are just cardboard cutouts. And it looks pretty. But behind the scenes, the West is broke. We've far outlived what we should have over the last 30, 40, 50 years. We've lived way beyond our means. And the day to pay the piper is out there. And the truth is more than likely going to be what pushes us to that moment in time.
So,
Dave, let me mention one other thing. All of this truth leads to gold and silver because gold and silver are real money. They are money. Everything else is fiat. Everything else is paper. Everything else is a receipt off of gold and silver. Gold and silver have no liability. They have value because they are. Everything else has a liability, whether it be a dollar or British pound or Japanese government bond or German bond or a euro, whatever. They all rely on someone else to perform. They all rely on someone else's liability. Gold and silver don't rely on anything. And as these truths come out and confidence is shaken, people are going to look to move to the safest place, and the safest place is the place that has no liability.
So going forward in the year of 2018, what do you predict or what do you see happening in that year?
That's a pretty broad topic. I mean, it could, like we were just talking about, it could go several different ways. You could see the truth come out. You could see credit markets start to collapse. Credit markets are going to collapse one way or the other. We could have a false flag. We could be in war. It's hard to say exactly, but I do believe the truth after truth after truth being piled up on top of credit that is piled up to the moon, and the bulk of it bad credit, we're going to see a credit collapse, which will affect your standard of living. You may be someone who has all physical gold and silver. It's buried, can't be stolen from you, but I guarantee you everybody's lifestyle is going to change.
Bill, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work?
Go to JSMindset, MINESET.com.
Bill, once again, thank you very much for being on the Spotlight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.